I want us to become brothers again like we used to be, and for us to find ourselves and bond with each other. Can we agree to that?
Opinions vary.
Welcome to Three Brothers Filmcast, and we're back this month with a bonus episode for the Christmas season about what makes a movie a Christmas movie. If you've been listening to us or reading Three Brothers Film for a few years, you've probably noticed that our viewing habits can be thematic and cyclical. We like to watch movies in response to world events and the seasons of the year. Everyone knows the summer movie season, but you could check out our Easter movies video on YouTube, or our list of 12 unconventional Christmas movies posted on Christmas Eve 2021. In that article, I laid out some of the quandaries generally raised when we debate whether a movie is a Christmas movie. Is it a matter of setting or subject matter, or even viewing context? Does a movie have to be explicitly about Christmas to be a Christmas movie? Brothers, before we get into a general discussion of the topic or a deep dive a couple debatable films, I want to test the waters. I'm going to give a movie title, and you tell me if it is a Christmas movie in your books. Let's keep it short, yes, no, or no more than a short comment, and then we can elaborate later on. We can dig into things later. Aaron, why don't you go first, then Anders, and then I'll go last. You guys ready?
Okay.
Okay. Die Hard.
Yes.
Yes.
And I will say yes as well. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Aaron?
Yeah, ultimately, yeah.
Anders?
I'm borderline, so I might wave no on that one.
Okay. I'll say yes. The Sound of Music. Aaron?
No.
Anders?
No.
I would also say no. In spite of the fact that many people watch it during Christmas. Keeping with action movies, not Die Hard 2, but Lethal Weapon. Aaron?
Yes.
Yes.
I would say no, but I might have to rewatch the movie. Okay. Easy Ball, I think. Home Alone?
Yes.
Yes.
Obviously.
Maybe someone doesn't. I'd say yes as well. Okay. Horton Hears a Who. I can't even say this word. Okay. Horton Hears a Who. Specifically the old animated version. Aaron?
Despite it being the B-side on the DVD release from 2002 or whatever, no.
With the Grinch?
Yeah.
Anders?
Yeah, probably no.
Yeah, I'd say no.
But it's
But kids will watch it on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, definitely.
Yep.
Okay. Something from our list of 12 unlikely Christmas movies. Children of Men. Aaron?
Yeah, I think it is.
Anders?
Yes, I wrote a whole piece on it.
Yes, well, maybe you change your mind. I'll say no. Okay, and last one for our list here, Meet Me in St. Louis. Aaron?
Yes.
Anders?
Yeah, I think it's a better candidate than some of the other musicals.
I would also say yes. So, like, pretty good consensus on a lot of these. I mean, we often think alike, but a few points of divergence. You know, Children of Men, you guys agreeing, me not agreeing. I think a lot of people would say that The Sound of Music is a Christmas movie in their books because a lot of people do watch it. But I think this raises the whole question of like, what makes a Christmas movie? Is it a matter of the setting? It has to be set at Christmas time. Is it subject matter? It has to be explicitly about Christmas in some way. Is it about the themes? You know, whether they are the meaning of Christmas, which a lot of movies are about, or even sort of related themes like family bonds, family rituals. Then there's the question of like how much Christmas has to be in a movie. You know, Meet Me in St. Louis. It's very famous for having, a Christmas song that was started in there, but Christmas only features in one of the sequences and it's telling the story of the whole year for the characters. So, you know, these are the things I just want to wrestle through for a few minutes of how do you sort of go about defining it? Is there certain things that matter? Because then even if you get into Sound of Music, it's kind of like people's personal rhythms in their life will establish a movie that maybe isn't ostensibly about Christmas as a Christmas movie because Sound of Music was often played on regular network TV during the holidays. And people just started developing that habit.
So people build their
you build your liturgies
around
movies.
it, and like I think obviously even you could take some of like the greatest the Christmas movies of all time. Take even like It's a Wonderful Life.
Yes,
The vast majority of the movie is not set at Christmas, although the title cards and the climactic hour, of the movie definitely tilts that it was conceived of to be Christmas that way. But still, I think And then there's a funny thing where like a lot of movies, they aren't necessarily always released at Christmas in theaters and stuff like that. That I think, because actually I was going to say, Aaron, a movie feels like a Christmas movie to me a little bit.
What?
Titanic.
Oh yeah, a little bit.
But like in the same way that Sound of Music is, right?
Because of
time when it originally came out, that kind of romantic epic that hits like multiple quadrants on the viewing,
Yeah.
It's something you can watch with like your family, your wife, if older kids. And
Aaron, like, what do you think about, like, what are you thinking of when you're thinking of like, is this a Christmas movie?
Well, I kind of break it down as it has to be ultimately about the meaning of Christmas, right? But you have to take that in the two folds, right? There's the religious sense or the secular sense.
Yep.
And so this is the thing that I always get into arguments with people about, and Die Hard is kind of the test case. And people would be like, okay, well, you think Die Hard is a Christmas movie because it's set on Christmas Eve. I'm like, well, that is deliberate. It's not like an accidental part of the movie. It's a key part of it, but it's the movie that's often given as a counter is like, well, Die Hard's not like The Holiday, the like Jude Law, Jack Black, Cameron Diaz, Kate Winslet movie that is inexplicably popular nowadays with millennials.
Yeah, my wife
for some reason it's become a huge Christmas classic.
It's a Nancy Meyers film, isn't it?
I'm not sure, but it's a movie that people will be like, well, that's a Christmas movie, and I'll be like, how is that more of a Christmas movie than Die Hard? They're like, well, it's like friendly.
The Holiday is a Nancy Meyers.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. And I would say that both of those movies fit the bill as a secular Christmas movie, in as such that what is Christmas about within the secular worldview? It is about the reestablishment of the family. Mm-hmm. It is essentially a time when you're supposed to pare back the material conditions of the surrounding world and focus on what, quote unquote, really matters, right? Yeah. And what really matters within the Christmas context is family. It's why, so I watched this past week National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, and then the next day I watched Die Hard, and I was like, these movies both follow the bill so well because it is about a family in some level of crisis that over the course of a high stress scenario that happens to take place around the holidays, they end up in a place in which the material conditions are clarified for them, and they determine that what really matters is the togetherness, and it's the family bonds, and it is focusing again on what really matters. So Die Hard is all about reforming the marriage.
Yep.
So using this definition, which I tend to agree this is one way to do it, then another that bolsters my case from our list in 2021 that Eyes Wide Shut is a Christmas movie
because of
it is about this sort of eventual reestablishing of the family unit as a sort of, even the bourgeois, he's a doctor, they're wealthy people reestablishing the family unit against temptation and the sort of dark forces of the world that he encounters. And it's that over Christmas. It begins at a Christmas party, right?
So here's what I'm starting to think, though. Aaron, I think that's a really compelling read of the secular thematic that has to be there for it to be a Christmas movie in some sense. If it's not explicitly about like what makes Christmas in the holiday, like in like the Grinch. Yeah. But I think it's the partnering of like you also have to then have one more element. So Die Hard has Christmas Eve setting.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so if Die Hard was about reestablishing the family in a heightened situation, that alone wouldn't make it a Christmas movie.
If it was on July 4th, it wouldn't be a Christmas movie.
but just having setting and then those themes makes it in a way that's stronger than if you just have sort of an almost arbitrary setting around the holidays.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I think you're right that like it needs to tap into the meaning of the holidays in some sense, in some of the different ways that people celebrate the holiday.
So I think the flip side, the other test case then we can use is then taking the religious meaning, right?
Yeah.
So like movies,
movies explicitly about the Christmas
story, right? Yeah. Like about Jesus and Bible things, and like, and I think that Children of Men fits that bill, right? In the sense that it kind of consciously alluding to this. The birth of a child,
it's a nativity story.
Exactly.
So you would see it as on some level like an allegory for the Christmas story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or just
Clive Owen is a Joseph figure who's literally forced into this scenario, right? Of
Yeah.
like,
And the
it's
movie more than the
salvation.
book, actually. The book's not.
no.
But
It-
not the same way.
Anton, you didn't ask this, but like you made the argument in our list that Blade Runner 2049 was an unconventional Christmas movie. How is Blade Runner 2049 different than Children of Men? They're both movies in some sense about shepherding hope in a dystopian scenario that uses the nativity story as the kind of thematic framework for its sci-fi storytelling. Because this is one of the most interesting things you pointed out. Now it's actually almost impossible for me to not think about when going back to the nativity narrative within the Gospels, is that it's dystopian. It's this idea of like Herod's Palestine, right? Like it is this oppressive state, Rome and Herod and the killing of children, and it's this like out of this dysfunctional social scenario is what it actually comes out. And that, so like sci-fi uses that template so often.
Yeah, so there's you're right. So if we're exploring sort of like the Christ origin story aspect of Christmas, you're right that a lot of sci-fi is then tapping in to these themes. But then what makes it more, I think you have to have some strong elements. So maybe
Children of Men has a family element. It really does.
Yeah,
'cause
like
he creates a makeshift family with her.
I would say that off the top of my head, I would said no. I haven't seen that movie in probably a decade. But you're convincing me that maybe
you had children, so
you're convincing me that there's something there where it's worth exploring. And
well, maybe that's what somebody who's listening to this, like maybe you should put on Children of Men with this different mindset. You don't have to be convinced when you go into it. Just take a slightly different angle to these movies that you might know and think are great. But there is an interesting element where watching it with that lens might actually be more meaningful in the Christmas season than just revisiting Home Alone for the 20th time. Like, I love Home Alone.
You can read
really
my review to some things to watch out for and sort of think about.
Your review of Children of Men?
In Children of Men, yeah.
No, because I actually think there's something really valuable about watching. I'm not saying like heavy entertainment. Like it's not like Christmas should just be dour movies or something that like, let's take no watching The Grinch or The Home Alone or National Lampoon anymore.
Yeah, I'll be a Grinch about it. Yeah,
exactly. But last night I watched Decalogue 3, which I think is absolutely a Christmas movie in like every way, even though has almost nothing that you would actually think is Christmassy. Like it's about. So if people aren't familiar, it's Krzysztof Kieslowski's television series from 88, 89. It's 10 episodes based loosely around the 10 Commandments. This episode is number 3, so it's keep the Sabbath day holy. That's the specific commandment that it's drawing on. And it's about Christmas Eve. This man comes home from a hard work week, brings gifts to his family, settling down to have a aperitif with his wife, and then he gets a phone call. He goes out, and essentially he has to create this whole ruse that it's his ex-lover, his mistress, that he's no longer with, who's out searching for her husband who's disappeared, and she needs help. And he, kind of against his better judgment, spends Christmas Eve night with her, searching for her husband. And over this, you relive the relationship, come to these conclusions of where they are in their current life, and then ultimately he goes back to his family and reaffirms that that's the important thing there. But the key of the movie is the like, it's the Sabbath thing. It's the idea of like what makes a day holy is by who you choose to spend it with and how you choose to spend it. So it reframes this whole idea of like, what is, if Christmas Eve is a day like any other, then it's actually like, if you spend it like any other day, it's not actually an important day. It has to be something elevated and heightened. And then it does happen to take place on Christmas Eve.
But I think that also that structure of having like the narrative unfold over Christmas Eve, I mean, it's like Dickens, right? Like it's like Christmas Carol. It's become this kind of its own thing.
Yes.
Well, Christmas Carol is kind of the supra narrative, right? It's like the Bible, and then Christmas Carol bridges that to secular.
There is a Christmas movie, which is good, about Charles Dickens writing a Christmas Carol.
Okay.
And it's called The Man Who Invented Christmas.
Yeah,
it's actually good. It's actually good.
Yeah, like when I heard that title, and I was like, what is this movie?
The trailers were bad.
And the trailers were bad. and it has like a fantastical element where he like sort of sees characters, around him.
Yeah.
But it,
Like it's a
but that
mainstream
title
biopic
actually
type thing,
captures
yeah.
something that's important that people forget, that in the Anglo world,
Christmas celebration had declined by the early 19th century.
immensely declined, and A Christmas Carol really did like reinvent the holiday. And then the themes of A Christmas Carol, in particular, sort of criticism of materialism and commercialism, combined with charity, combined with
Memories
having a
and
day that through memory and through re-engagement with aspects of your life, you can sort of be renewed or redeemed. Like all of that gets bound up in a lot of secular versions of Christmas.
And well, that's why there's value in if somebody has their personal liturgy of watching Sound of Music at Christmas. That's meaningful because the whole engagement of Christmas is this idea of ritual, right, within the calendar. And it is this idea of you are specifically taking out of your life and you're putting this apart and you're going to engage with it in a special way. It's something that it still exists within the holiday, even within the secular sense, right?
Yep.
It's that like it's an exalted day in some way, shape, or form in a way that's more meaningful than just, you have so many people be like, Halloween's actually my favorite holiday. And it's like, well, it's not a holiday. Within like,
did you have to go to work that day?
Yeah,
then it's not a holiday.
You went to work, but like dressing up's fun and watching the movies is fun, and you have made some rituals around it, but it is not something that literally our society is like set apart.
Yeah, exactly. That's the key for holy, is something that's set apart.
No, so just really briefly to go back to the Decalogue 3 thing, my point there is that like Decalogue 3 it's not a happy movie.
No.
Yeah.
It's
Polish.
quite devastating. Every episode of Decalogue is devastating, except for the last one, which is like pretty funny. I mean, actually, many of them are funny. They're not comedies. But watching that kind of movie, instead of just watching Die Hard and National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation and Home Alone and How the Grinch Stole Christmas, it provides this like meaningful, reflective nature that actually is like, it's to pull another movie into this, it's the kind of Linus within Charlie Brown's Christmas being like, this is what Christmas is all about, Charlie Brown.
Yeah.
And it gives you this, like, you take a step back and you're like, oh, it reframes the season. You're like, there is something meaningful here, even if you can get like bogged down in the everyday busyness of it, because it's super hectic too.
There's a part of me that thinks Charlie Brown Christmas might be the best Christmas movie.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's perfect.
And it's amazing that this, this animated cartoon comic book movie like is so good at sort of the way it sort of sets up the melancholy of the season for Charlie Brown, and he's like, why am I not happy about it? Like I had it on the other day and like I was like, oh man, this is like so insanely deep and like poignant.
And even the craft, the technique, like the kids' voices, the way they're recorded, because they use real child. If you watch the making of special on the disc, it has like they use real children, right?
Yeah.
Like, and they
you have a
would have
6-year-old
them
speaking
repeat
Sally,
and they would repeat the lines to them, so which is why sometimes it's kind of like that has that delivery and it works so well. So it captures that real childlikeness.
There's certain movies that have also partly through the music, like Vince Guaraldi's music, which is, justly famous, justly played all the time.
Best-selling jazz album of all time, right?
But between the animation, the sort of slow pace, it's interesting. I always notice with my kids, like what slow things will hold their attention. In that movie, they wanted to watch again. And, they really liked like the new animated like Grinch movie. Like, and I don't like that movie. Yeah. I don't understand the point of it. They're creeped out by the Jim Carrey one. They find him terrifying. I think a lot of children nowadays are like,
yeah, my kids really
what is
don't
with
like
that makeup in that movie? I understand that. But so like, the Grinch is fairly hyper, like a lot of these animated movies.
Yeah,
but they still like Charlie Brown.
The Illumination one, right?
Yeah. And it seems to get Charlie Brown Christmas seems to get on the same wavelength at times as Miyazaki movies, where they almost like have like almost like you almost get into like a Zen meditative state while you're like watching it, because it's kind of slow and there's not that much happening, but you just sort of like enjoy taking it in, and it actually like calms you down. I don't know. It's really
absolutely,
it's interesting. I would say I agree, Aaron, with your earlier point too, that like, if someone's like, I watch The Sound of Music every year, or I got to watch Horton Hears a Who after I watch The Grinch, because that's what I do at Christmas. I also think that there's a lot of value in that, but I also think it's like that doesn't make it a Christmas movie, because what I would say, it's like, this is what I say to my students, is we have to unentangle like the subjective from the objective, and like, you know, anything could be a Christmas movie if you watch it, I guess, enough. But you're like, then that holds no meaning for what our conversation is.
Yeah, and
But you're right but at the same time, I think there is value in creating those own personal habits and rituals of watching whatever the movie is. And I think it's like a takeaway. That's good to sometimes engage with something a little bit more substance.
there's value in that. It's like going back to our list from a few years ago. I don't think the Lord of the Rings movies count as Christmas movies, but I also feel there's value in the revisiting them, partially because they did come out at Christmas season. So there is like a personal significance in this idea of taking a break to watch a super long movie with your family, which you watched, at first in theaters. You all took the like 5 hours to go to the theater and then watch the movie and then like come home. And it's comforting, and comfort is not the only aspect of this kind of seasonal watching, but it's a meaningful part of it. And then if it has these overall themes that are really like heartening, right? It adds to that. And I think part of the thing with why I am drawn to certain Christmas movies like Die Hard and Lethal Weapon is that they're movies that understand the like hard-won nature of a Christmas piece. And because they're action movies, they heighten it, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's about this establishment of family. It's about this rejection of like the material distraction and this focusing within the cozy, love of the domestic sphere. Like literally in Lethal Weapon, Riggs, like Mel Gibson's character, will kill himself if he does not find this stability and love with Murtaugh, his partner. It sounds silly, but like the movie truly is a bromance, because it's like he would not survive if he did not end up being like, this is the guy who like will save his life, because they are just meant to be partners. And that's why I love the scene in number 2 so much, when there's the toilet bomb and then Riggs is like, Roger, and they just kind of like, they can't say I love you or anything, but they both just kind of look and they're like, yeah, I know, and they just kind of like nod, and then they're like, it's just so good because it comes with such weight behind it, because you've gone through the whole first movie, right?
What about a couple more tough cases we could revisit here? So Anton, after this, I'm trying to think, is Hook a Christmas movie?
I'm glad you brought it up, because I was gonna pitch this at the end. So I was thinking about this and I was like, okay, it's set. I picked it to put on that list of 12 unlikely Christmas movies. It's set at Christmas time, at least in the real world part at the beginning. And it has a nice atmosphere of London at Christmas time. And it's like going back to, your grandparents' house. It also has a lot of the thematics that Aaron was talking about, where it's about family reconciliation, thinking back over your life, sort of
rejection
figuring
of
out who
materialism.
you are, rejection of materialism. In a classic sort of 90s dad
That's
art.
why I don't like A Christmas Story, because it's actually a movie about materialism. Sorry.
I need to rewatch
I much
it.
prefer his Black Christmas.
Yeah, no, Black. Oh god, that movie's good.
But so I was thinking, I was like, okay, is that enough to make Hook? And then the final piece, which wasn't actually in my mind when I wrote that mini review back in the few years ago, but upon rewatching it, I was like, oh, and Hook is also a Christmas fantasia. So then it puts it similar to, say,
Nutcracker.
The Nutcracker.
Yeah.
Because what happens is he goes on a magical journey.
But it's
and
all
at the
just
end,
over the night. Yeah.
It's over just the night, and all this sort of crazy stuff happens. And it's a very, you almost think of the way Neverland is shown there as something like the Nutcracker. Like it doesn't really make sense on sort of like a world building sense.
No.
But it makes more sense if you think of it as a weird fantasia that he's journeying through. And then at the end, there's the strange suggestions that, like, when Toodles flies off, you're like, okay, well, it's real. But at the same time, the movie multiple times wants to hint that maybe this was a dream, or maybe it's actually both. Like the reality is also the dream. And
because like Bob Hoskins sweeping the bottles at the end, right? Like,
yes. And there's insinuations that Smee has been in... He's been in like our world, watching him and following him. And then there's a line that Hook gives them where he's like, you're just going to wake up and find out
Yeah,
that you're a
just
middle-aged
boy
man who
will
drinks
pick
too
a banyan.
much.
A man who drinks too much is rude to his wife and children. Yeah. Oh, that.
So that's
okay,
why
you're also convincing me that it's contrary to what people say. It is a good movie.
It's very good.
I
It's a
actually think-
movie that I'd say the first 35 minutes are like 10 out of 10, like Spielberg masterpiece. And then we get some ridiculousness that I'm like, and then there's like,
I kind of like Rufio now.
I just feel bad for Rufio now. Dude gets killed.
He's the pan. You're the Dad. The way that Dad will, with pure glee and like truly, like he's, dipping water from the well of life. It's you're the pan.
So it's also a movie that's taken on something of a Christmas movie status through our repetitions over the years. But I do think you could make the case as well for it. Well, we've covered a few different things. Hopefully that gives you some ideas if you want to stray, further than some of the great classics, which we too love watching. It's a Wonderful Life frequently. But check out our 12 unlikely Christmas movies list or anything we've mentioned here, and let us know if there's anything you watched and that you think is a Christmas movie. Have a great holiday. Merry Christmas.
Goodbye, Mr. Bond.
I bid you farewell.